So as we all know, Demon Slayer Season 4 has just wrapped up very recently, and it wrapped up in a very big way with its finale. With its finale, we saw all the Hashiras trying to battle Muzan, but in the process, they fell into the Infinity Castle, and this sets up everything we need to know for the next season, because we all know what arc is coming. The Hashira Sports Festival arc, the most anticipated arc in all of Demon Slayer, is finally here. I'm just kidding. I'm messing with you guys. Obviously, we're getting the Infinity Castle arc next season. The arc everyone has been waiting for since the start of the series. And personally, my favorite arc in all of Demon Slayer. So, as many of you may already know, this arc is arguably the biggest and most action-packed arc in the entire series, excluding one other arc, that being the Sunrise Countdown arc. And with it being possibly the most action-packed arc, that means we get a lot of fights. That's right, the Hashiras are throwing down with the top upper moons. Finally, after waiting the entire series, we are going to see it. So that means we are going to see a lot of fights. So I've taken it upon myself to rank these fights from worst to best. But in all reality, this list is purely based off of my own opinion, how much I enjoyed the fights, and how well written I think each fight is. I'm not saying my list is objective facts right here, because it's not. This is all completely based off my own opinion and how much I enjoyed the fights, but I will be providing reasoning for my rankings. So it's not going to just be completely out of nowhere, not making any sort of sense. Hopefully you guys will understand where I'm coming from, and obviously many of you are probably going to have completely different rankings from what I have. And also, just a quick FYI, I'm only going to be talking about Infinity Castle fights. Fights that took place inside the Infinity Castle. So I'm not going to be talking about the Muzan fight during the Sunrise Countdown arc, because believe it or not, many people don't actually know this, but the Sunrise Countdown and the Infinity Castle arc are two different arcs, and sometimes people just blend them into one. So I will not be taking the Muzan fight into consideration here. With all that being said, let's get right into the ranking. And I know a moment earlier I just said that this list is my opinion and nothing is facts, but disregard that for a quick moment, because objectively the worst fight in the entire Infinity Castle and coming in dead last is going to be Obanai, Mitsuri, and Yushiro up against Upper Moon 4, Nakame. This is easily the worst fight in the entire arc, and I don't think anyone can say anything that will change that. Like, objectively, this is the worst one. Mostly because of the fact that we didn't even get to see it happen. Everything that happened in this fight literally happened off screen. We, as the audience, did not get to see anything about it. All we saw was the very end of the fight, where Yushiro was already in control of Nakame and used that to get the upper hand on Muzan. That is it. It is very hard to rank a fight that we didn't get to see anything higher than that. And honestly, I feel like I know why the author didn't put in this fight. It's because Nakame was most likely just teleporting Obanai and Mitsuri all around the place, and it would have been really boring to either read or watch on screen. So that's why the author just decided to off-screen this entire fight, which honestly was a little disappointing that we didn't get to see Obanai go down against any Upper Moon, but what can you do? But this is easily the worst fight in the entire arc. There's no other fight that should be at the bottom of this list. Now, coming in 5th place is a fight that many people won't even consider ranking because they don't see it as an official fight. But since it happened during the Infinity Castle, I decided to throw it in here. And the fight I'm talking about is Giyu and Tanjiro versus Muzan. So, once all the Upper Moons were defeated, Giyu and Tanjiro were the first people on site to encounter Muzan, and because of that, they had a very quick altercation with him before the Infinity Castle fell apart. And the reason why I'm throwing this in here is because this was the first time any of the main characters in the series got to fight against Muzan. This was practically Muzan's introduction to them. Yes, Tanjiro did encounter Muzan earlier on in the series, but it wasn't the same. He only saw Muzan. This time, he was actually facing off against him. So I felt like it was notable enough for me to throw into this ranking. However, it's so low on the list because it was just such a short fight. And despite it being short, it was still nice to see, especially to see what Muzan was thinking of himself and how he thought of himself as like a calamity instead of an actual person. And he just viewed himself as a force of nature. So seeing Muzan's ideology was interesting to see. Seeing Giyu and Tanjiro be filled with so much rage over what Muzan was saying was also awesome to see. But overall, the fight itself, it was very short, and it mainly just consisted of Giyu deflecting Muzan's attacks and saving Tanjiro in the process. Not really much to talk about other than that. Coming in 4th place, I have Zenitsu versus Kaigaku. And I honestly loved this fight. And the only reason why it's coming in 4th place, a lot like the 5th place spot, this fight was really short. But even with it being short, it was still amazing regardless. In fact, I was really debating on putting it in the top 3, but I had to just reread the fight and I didn't realize how short the fight itself actually was. The fight starts at the end of chapter 144, and the reason why I like this fight a lot is because it shows us a side of Zenitsu we have never seen before. Zenitsu was always the shy, scared kid in the series, yet in this fight, he is facing off what is an official upper moon, that being Kaigaku, and he is just shit-talking him the entire time. Like, at the very end of chapter 144, he's literally just calling Kaigaku trash. He doesn't even take him seriously at this point. But anyways, the reason why it's in the 4th place spot is because the fight starts at the end of chapter 144 with Zenitsu shit-talking Kaigaku, and it ends at the end of chapter 145. So this fight realistically lasted for only a chapter, and even then a good chunk of the fight was flashback. So realistically, it was less than a chapter long, but either way, I think that this was a phenomenal fight. It definitely showed off Zenitsu's growth as a character, and on top of that, gave him a lot of development. He finally became this standalone, solid character who can rely on himself and doesn't have to go to sleep every time he needs to get serious for a battle. He can actually face his problems on his own now, and we can already tell by this point, Zenitsu is Hashira level, without even needing a mark, considering he took out an upper moon by himself. Now, I know people are going to say that Kaigaku wasn't an actual upper moon, blah, blah, blah. Whatever you want to say, Kaigaku was an upper moon, and I actually covered this in my previous video, so if you want to check that out, you should. But this fight was just overall great for Zenitsu. It displayed how strong he is now, it displayed how much he's developed as a character, and even though it was so quick, it was so enjoyable to read. And I know for a fact people are going to be crazy hyped over this fight once it gets animated, and you should be. Once this fight gets animated, people are going to go insane seeing Zenitsu pop off. But we have the 3 so-called minor fights out of the way now. Now we move on to the big boys territory. Every fight we talk about after this point is a big one, because we're talking about the fights between Upper Moons 3-1 now. These are the major fights of this arc. Now, in my opinion, the weakest top 3 Upper Moon fight that we got in the Infinity Castle arc has to be Doma versus Inosuke, Kano, and Shinobu. I do not see myself placing this fight higher than the Akaza fight or higher than the Kokushibo fight. I just can't. First things first, I have to preface that a good chunk of the enjoyability from these fights comes from how much I like the characters. And there is not a single person that is involved in this fight that I really like that much. Like, for example, Shinobu, she's probably one of my least favorite and least interesting Hashiras. Don't really care for her. Inosuke is my least favorite character out of the main trio of Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke. And Kano, in all honesty, I didn't even care for her existence up until the Infinity Castle arc. So, in this fight, the person I probably have the most connection to, or I like the most as a character, is gonna be Doma. And even then, he's my least favorite out of the top 3 Upper Moons. So, really, I have no sort of tie to this fight as to why I should enjoy it. But besides that, let's get into my other points. First off, this fight just felt a little bit underwhelming in my opinion. On all aspects too. First, we had Shinobu go up against Doma in a one-on-one fight, and honestly, her fight could have been longer. She didn't even attain her mark, and unlike Tengen and Rengoku, she had already interacted with people who had marks. So, she was the only Hashira during this entire arc that did not activate their mark, which in my opinion doesn't make any sense, but I guess the author just wanted to speed things up with this fight, and I can kind of get behind that, but also it would have been nice to see Shinobu's full potential, because at the end of the day, she is a Hashira. So rather than treating Shinobu as an actual character, she was mainly treated as just a plot device in order to beat Doma, because it just seemed like Doma was so powerful, so overpowered, that the Hashiras wouldn't have been able to beat him without some sort of plot device being put into play, and that plot device just happened to be Shinobu and the poison inside of her body, which ultimately is what took out Doma. So that's my first major issue with this fight. And my second big issue with this fight is that the entire time, Doma did not take it seriously. And yes, before people start commenting, I know that it's in Doma's character not to take anything seriously, and I get that. But, come on, this is Upper Moon 2. We, as the audience, want to see what Upper Moon 2 is capable of, and I feel like we didn't get that because the entire time, Doma was playing around with Inosuke and Kano and even Shinobu, and only until the very end, when the poison really started affecting him, is when I feel like we got to see him go all out, or at least try the most he did up until that point. But even then, it wasn't enough. And especially since a good chunk of this fight is piggybacking off of the Tanjiro, Giyu, and Akaza fight, and we just got to see how powerful Akaza truly was, we were ready to see what Upper Moon 2 was capable of. You know, the Upper Moon that was supposedly stronger than Akaza, and I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't impressed. Yes, we could tell that he was stronger than Akaza, but I wish we got to see the full extent of his power the same way we got to see that about Akaza and the same way we got to see it about Kokushibo. This fight overall, in my opinion, was just underwhelming, and for an Upper Moon 2 fight, it was a little disappointing that we only got to see one Hashira go up against Doma. I personally would have rathered to see Obanai and Mitsuri play a role in this fight, because Obanai and Mitsuri didn't even get proper fights during this arc. And I feel like the top 3 Upper Moons should have all gone up against some formidable Hashiras, but hey, it's just my opinion at the end of the day. I'm sure a lot of people love this fight. Me personally, it's just not my cup of tea. I was very underwhelmed with it. Now, coming in the second place spot, I was this close to putting this fight in the #1 spot because it's just that good. And honestly, if you have this fight as your favorite fight in the Infinity Castle arc, I can't blame you. I love this fight so much, and the fight I'm talking about is Tanjiro and Giyu versus Akaza. I have that fight in my #2 spot. This fight is great for so many reasons. First off, this is a revenge fight. We get to see Tanjiro and Gyu spin back for Rengoku's death and avenge him. Who doesn't love a good old classic revenge fight? I know I do personally, which is a major reason why I love this fight. Another major reason why I love this fight. Gyu is my favorite Hashira, so I might just be a little biased towards this fight. But either way, even if you don't like Gyu, you have to admit this fight is amazing. Since I already mentioned Gyu, let's talk about Gyu versus Akaza and why I love it so much. One major reason why I love that fight is because it is a complete parallel to Rengoku versus Akaza. If we take a look back at Rengoku versus Akaza, we saw Rengoku had honed his battle spirit to utmost perfection. This guy was the perfect matchup for Akaza. Flash forward to the Gyu fight, and now Akaza goes from fighting somebody who had so much battle spirit to fighting somebody who doesn't even want to fight. Gyu in this fight is literally talking about how he doesn't care for fighting. He doesn't want to fight Akaza, somebody who is always so eager to fight, because that's not like him. He doesn't like fighting, he doesn't like even going all out, as he says. And then to see Gyu's battle spirit awaken in the form of his mark was so cool to see, in my opinion. And just seeing him go toe-to-toe with Akaza, finally at equal footing, and actually give him a hard time, was awesome to see, in my opinion. I love Gyu's portion of the fight, but that's enough talk about Gyu, because let's talk about Tanjiro. We got to see Tanjiro achieve Transparent World and scare the absolute daylights out of Akaza. I mean, Akaza was so shook seeing that Tanjiro's battle spirit had completely disappeared. It got to the point where Akaza decided that no matter what, he has to take Tanjiro out in that exact moment, or else he'd be screwed. And he was right, because even right after that attack that Akaza let out, Tanjiro just instantly beheaded Akaza, and the fight was practically over until Akaza had his little weird thing where he evolved to be a demon that can survive without a head, which was crazy to see and very worrisome. But overall, this fight was amazing. We got to see Gyu go all out for the first time in the series. We got to see him achieve his mark, which is the first mark activation we got in the Infinity Castle arc, which is really cool to see. We got to see Tanjiro unlock Transparent World, a brand new thing that we hadn't seen before. And this was the first time we saw them defeat Upper Moon 3-1. So that was a monumental feat for any of them to achieve. And on top of all of this, they spun back for Rengoku. What more could you need from a fight? Coming in at the #1 spot for the best Infinity Castle fight, and I'm sure many of you expected this to be in the #1 spot, that is going to be Kokushibo versus Gyome, Sanemi, Muichiro, and Genya. I don't know how else to describe this fight other than absolute perfection, because we got to see Kokushibo go all out. Upper Moon won. Kokushibo 1,000,000% lived up to the hype, regardless of what anyone says. He lived up to the hype. We got to see why he's Upper Moon 1. We got to see the strongest Hashira go all out, that being Gyome, and unlock his mark. We got to see the second strongest Hashira, that being Sanemi, tag team with Gyome and also unlock his mark. We got to see Muichiro and Genya contribute to this fight. And also another reason why this fight is the best is because it has the most combatants. We got to see 4 people, 4 Demon Slayers, all at once go up against Upper Moon 1. That's sick, because Doma's fight in total was 3 people, and most of the time it was a 2-on-1 fight. Same with Akaza's fight, it was a 2-on-1 fight the entire time. Kokushibo's fight was 4-on-1. They needed the 2 strongest Hashiras, another Hashira, and another Demon Slayer on top of that to even rival his strength. So it really gave the audience a good idea of how powerful this dude Kokushibo was. Not only did we get to see how strong Kokushibo was, we also got to see Sanemi's strength and him go one-on-one against Kokushibo and actually hold his own. We then got to see Guillaume go one-on-one against Kokushibo and also put up a very good performance. Then we got to see one of the nastiest tag teams of all time, that being Guillaume and Sanemi tag teaming Kokushibo, which is honestly the dream team. You got the two strongest Hashiras tag teaming in a fight together. Who doesn't want to see that? Now, a lot of people don't like the conclusion of this fight because they think Kokushibo kind of just offed himself the same way Akaza did, but that is not the case at all. Kokushibo never at any point gave up the will to fight the same way Akaza did. Kokushibo simply could not regenerate anymore because of Muichiro's red blade. It was preventing him from regenerating. He didn't have a choice. He lost the fight fair and square. He gave it his all and still lost to the combined efforts of Guillaume, Sanemi, Muichiro, and Genya. So that's another reason why I have this fight over the Akaza fight. It's the fact that Kokushibo didn't just end the fight himself the same way Akaza did. Kokushibo gave it his all and it just wasn't enough to beat them. My only flaw with this fight is how underused Muichiro was, because Muichiro is personally one of my favorite Hashiras. I love him a lot, and the way he got done in this fight was completely dirty because unlike Guillaume and Sanemi, he didn't stand a single chance against Kokushibo. Kokushibo instantly cut off his arm as soon as the fight started and pinned him against a wall, leaving him helpless to do anything. And the only other time he contributed was at the very end of the fight where he stabbed Kokushibo with his red blade, which is ultimately what took out Kokushibo. But I just wish he had more of an active role in the fight, the same way Sanemi and Guillaume did, and it would have been so cool to see a three-way tag team with Sanemi, Guillaume, and Muichiro. But can't have everything, unfortunately. But either way, this was easily the most action-packed fight in the entire arc, and I think it is easily the best fight in the entire Infinity Castle arc. And once that fight gets animated, it is going to completely topple the internet. Everyone is gonna go crazy over that fight, and I just know it is going to have the crispiest, juiciest, most succulent animation that we have ever laid our eyes upon. Anyways, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what other videos you guys want to see in the future. Hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.